Welcome to episode 3 of That Jew Can Cook. Before we get started, I thought I'd go through some of the questions I received on the webpage. Question number 1 comes to us from Seattle, Washington, which says, Andy, what was with that terrible tie-dye you wore towards the end of episode 2? Who picked that out? Well, the answer to that is the wardrobe guy. And I've warned him a couple times about his fashion tastes, and unfortunately, there's not a whole lot I can do. It was me. I was in a rush. Anyway, question number 2. Andy, episode 2 was a little boring. How come you don't do every episode like episode 1, where you drop stuff all over the place and make a fool of yourself? And the answer to that is, unless this show is going to make me my millions, it's a little tough to do that. It took a lot of work to clean up, and it was a little embarrassing. But if it will make me my millions, I will do anything I have to do that. So, gotta spill stuff, burn myself. Hey, even if I have to lose a limb. If I'm going to make millions, I'll do it. Question number 3 is, Andy, the editing was really Alright, look, there's no questions. I'm just making this stuff up as I go. So, why don't you join me in the kitchen, where we'll make some Jewish wedding soup today. Let's get started. So, you'll see, well, first thing you'll see is we've made quite an investment in the wardrobe in the kitchen today. So, hopefully you'll enjoy seeing me look all pseudo-professional instead of tie-dyes and sweats and all that other stuff. But today we're going to make Jewish wedding soup. There's no reason why the Italians should have the monopoly on wedding soup. So here's the ingredients we're going to need. We've got 6 ounces of ground chicken. We've got a small package of baby spinach, which has been washed. 1 egg. A bunch of Parmesan cheese. I don't know how much I'm going to need, so I'm not going to tell you now, but it'll be on the recipe later. Some panko breadcrumbs, which are now all over the cutting board. And we've got scallions. Now I'm going to take some advice from some of the last episodes. I'm not going to bore you to tears while I chop and cut and do all this, but maybe I'll edit a couple in so you could really see that I'm doing it, not hiring a bunch of people to come in and do it while I'm not looking. But before we do get started, you could make it another way, and that's find yourself a nice ripe can of Italian wedding soup, and then just call it Jewish wedding soup. Traditional Italian wedding soup has little baby meatballs in it. They're really yummy. They're slightly different. I tend to use chicken meatballs, and they're not really meatballs. They're more like dumplings, because it's a real pain in the ass to roll these things out. First thing, we have our ground chicken. I think I said 6 ounces before. I think it's 5. Doesn't matter. It could be 4. It could be 6. It could be 10. Who cares? So first thing you want to do is break an egg into it and beat that in. Or stir that in. And you'll see it has a really watery consistency. So we need to thicken that up a bit. That's where the panko comes in. Before we do that, we're going to put in some cheese. Now, I don't know how much this is, maybe like 2 or 3 tablespoons. That should be enough. I didn't even use all of it. And we want to put in most of the scallions. Now, while we're doing this, I have a pot of Andy's homemade chicken broth. Remember in episode 1, I said, don't use that canned shit? Well, I didn't use that canned shit. You don't want to do that here, because this is more of a subtle, a subtle tasting soup. It's not going to overpower it. So you add the scallions. You can see I did a crappy job cutting some of them. I was in a rush. Something about having to operate the camera and figure all this stuff out. Okay, but you can see it's still a little watery, and I probably have way too many scallions in here. But it'll cook up, and it'll be fine. So now we add the panko. This is to thicken it up a bit. So, I don't know, maybe. Now, the panko takes a little while to do its magic, so we're going to stir it in, wait a minute or 2, see how it looks, and then maybe stir in some more. But it's looking pretty good. It's getting pretty thick already. If you put in too much, I think you're kind of shit out of luck. You either got to add more chicken and egg, and maybe a little water will help, but I don't really know. So that's pretty good. That is pretty good. And it'll only thicken up over time. Now in the meantime, while waiting for the broth to boil, I didn't mention before, we also have like half cup or a cup of pasta. I use like ditalini, but little pastas generally do better in this. And we're going to put them in the end. It takes, notice that, I touched my nose. Damn. Damn! Alright, so this is all melted. It was frozen. I threw a block of solid broth in there like 10 minutes ago, and it's taking its sweet ass time to kind of come to a boil. But when that's boiling, which we'll just pretend, we take all of our spinach. Now this stuff shrinks down quite a bit, so you could just jam it in. Put in the spinach, we close it up. You'll notice we don't have our favorite soup making implement, or at least your favorite. That wasn't my favorite that day. That's not playing today. Oh, and I also forgot. We gotta throw in a little pepper into the mix. And a little bit of salt. Okay. We boiling yet? Not yet. Well, I'm gonna edit you out while waiting for this to boil, and we'll be back. Okay, now that we have the broth boiling with the spinach in there, we're going to add our meatballs. What we're going to do is take them and kind of scoop them in here and dump them in. You know, give them a second between each one so that way they don't stick to each other, and try to isolate a different area in the soup for each one. You'll see they're not perfect. They don't need to be. Unless I'm coming to your house for dinner. Okay, now I'll bring it up to the boil again. And since no one's looking, I'll just throw in that last bit of cheese. Cheese never hurts anybody. We're going to add our pasta, cover it for like 10 minutes. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done. We're done. As soon as it comes back to the boil. Okay, we're boiling. Look at it go! Okay, we add our pasta. Just give it a stir so it doesn't stick. Lower the heat. And now we come back in 10 minutes and see how we did. While waiting for our soup to come to boil, let's talk a little bit about canned soup. Now, canned soup, the problem with it is, how do you know when you got a ripe one? Do you shake it? Do you tap it? Or do you just wing it and hope you get lucky? The only bad thing about this recipe is there was no pork products used. And if you remember, the recipes that didn't have pork products were boring. Really boring. So maybe we'll just add a little bacon when no one's looking. No. Anyway. And we are ready to serve this sucker up. So let me try to do this without spilling it, burning myself, or anything along those lines. For Christmas, my future in-laws, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, they got me bacon vodka. And I've been meaning to try this, and it probably does not go good with soup. Probably goes better in a Bloody Mary. But why don't I give it a shot, see how it is. Maybe that'll make this recipe a lot much more fun. Probably would have been a lot more fun if I did it in the beginning. Anyway, skål. Ooh, not bad. It's like someone took a pig and let him swim in a vat of vodka. Anyway, let me try this, just so you know. On every cooking show they taste it. Like, I'm going to be able to convey what it tastes like to you guys. Silly. Wow, that fucker's hot. No, I'm kidding. It's not that hot, but it tastes good. And that's it for another episode of That You Can Cook. And Cablevision and Food Network, please get your shit together. You know, this just doesn't cut it.
Guarda lì.